Hey, how's it going? In this video, we're going to cover the 3 most important ad metrics that literally determine your success, whether you're advertising on meta platforms, TikTok, Google, whatever. If you don't understand the math and the science behind these metrics, you will never be able to figure out what the problem is on your ad sets. You won't be able to scale. Nothing will work. And literally, I swear, probably 10% of media buyers actually know the math behind these numbers. So let's go ahead and hop into it. And by the way, my name's Peter. I'm the founder of Idyllic Media, $8 million in ad spend. And I really like hopping into the data in these videos and actually sharing with you what's behind the numbers, because I swear no one actually talks about this. So let's get into it. These are the 3 KPIs: CPM, unique click-through rate, unique outbound click-through rate, or just click-through rate, depending on the platform, because some platforms don't have this one, and then cost per click, okay? So really, there's just 2. Click-through rate and CPM literally determine the success of every single one of your campaigns. And a lot of the time, it's hard to identify why a campaign's not performing. And in this video, I'll break down all the variables that go into these metrics so you can identify exactly why your campaigns aren't performing or why they are, so you can replicate them. Cool? All right, so let's hop into it. First and foremost comes CPM. So CPM is kind of a weird metric because there's a lot of variables that go in it. It's not super public how it's actually determined. Ad platforms never really give you the real details of like how it's calculated, but I'll kind of break that down for you today. One thing I'll show you before we get into that though is how all these pieces work together. Here's a return calculator. I've talked about this on a few other videos. Literally, this gives you a projected ROAS, and every single variable is included in this. So if we have an ad spend of $10,000, I can put in your metrics here and literally give you an estimate of what your ROAS would be based off that 10K, based off your click-through, your CPM, your conversion, AOV. I can literally give you an average ROAS. So with this tool, just by itself, we can diagnose what the issue is. We can see, hey, if we doubled conversion rate, what would that do to your overall brand? How would this impact it, right? Okay, cool, we just double ROAS right off the bat. So this is kind of what this is based on, all the math's in here, but I'm gonna break this down more so it makes a lot more sense, okay? So first, like CPM's on Facebook, it's on Google, it's on TikTok, etc. Like what actually is included in CPM? So CPM is just cost per 1,000 impressions, right? So just the cost to show your ad to 1,000 people, basically, for 1,000 people to see the ad. On some platforms, it's technically like cost per reach, which is slightly different, but for the sake of this video, it's just cost per 1,000 impressions. So the cost to show 1,000 people your ad. So when we look at the calculator here, a lot of the times, maybe your CPM is like $11.50. That means the cost per one person would be, $0.012, right? So it's a very small number to show your ad to one person. So that's why they put it in thousands, okay? Cool. So like what actually goes into CPM? Because this is a huge metric, and it has a huge impact. So for the sake of this video, we're just going to pretend our example CPM is $12. So obviously the first thing here that's going to impact CPM is your targeting, right? Who you're actually targeting, right? Because in Facebook and Google Performance Max even, and in TikTok, if you tell the platform to target a highly desirable audience that everyone else is bidding for, then it's going to be really expensive. So if you bid for iPhone users versus Android users, Apple versus Android, those Apple users are going to be way more expensive to target, right? If you target rich zip codes versus poor zip codes based off median income, it's gonna be way more expensive to target the rich zip codes, right? So it's just supply and demand, right? So the more demand, the more buying potential that target has, the more expensive they're gonna be, which is why sometimes on a lot of these platforms it makes more sense to just do broad targeting. So you get a cheaper CPM because you're not telling it specifically to target these expensive interests. So sometimes we'll have brands in the supplement industry, the medical industry is really expensive, fitness is usually a little expensive. There's specific niches that have higher CPMs because people are selling more expensive goods, so they're willing to spend more to acquire a customer, in which case, right, the CPMs go up. So that's all it is. CPM, the biggest factor I would say for CPM on most platforms is going to be targeting, right? Who you're targeting and how expensive that audience is, right? Which is just based on supply and demand. If there's a lot of demand for it, then it's going to be way more expensive, right? So that's a really key thing. And let's go into the next factor for CPM here. And I'll actually reveal, let's see here, we can probably reveal a couple of these at a time. Perfect. So seasonality, right? So for seasonality, basically throughout the year, you're going to have different CPMs. And I love this. There's a really good tool for this called Ingrammer CPM, I believe. Let me find this here. Facebook over time. This is a fantastic tool. Reveal bot. So this is really cool. You can actually see the CPM change over time. I've shown this to a few people, and I feel like, again, not a lot of people know about this, but I think it's really quite interesting. So let's just do January, right? So you can actually see the average cost per impression, and we can go by campaign objective even. We can see the cost of impression change over time, right? So this seasonality absolutely changes CPMs, and we can see the CPMs are a bit lower right now, right? So normally what happens is every January CPMs drop because brands are spending less money, right? There's less demand right after the holiday season, and then we see a massive shoot in November for Black Friday spending. So every November CPMs go crazy because everyone's spending on ads, right? Again, it's just supply and demand. So seasonality has a lot to do with CPMs. Technically, usually the best time to advertise every year is like January to February. That's normally when you're going to have some of the cheapest CPMs for most niches. So that's kind of what we find, and the worst time to advertise is technically November based off the CPMs, right? So here it goes from 24 down to like 15. So seasonality has a massive role to play on CPMs. And of course there's seasonality for niches, right? So if you're targeting swimwear, if you're trying to sell swimsuits in December, it's going to be way cheaper than in the summer, right? The CPMs are going to be a lot higher in the summer for selling swimsuits because, again, the supply is lower because more people are bidding on those targets, right? More on those people, and so there's just going to be a more expensive audience to access versus if you do that in the winter. So seasonality works just in general for like shopping season, but also on a per niche basis, seasonality occurs. And right now you're like, okay, why are Facebook CPMs lower right now? Well, Facebook has been like forcing they've literally been making their CPMs lower, the amount they take, simply just due to all the iOS 14 stuff, and people are advertising a bit less at the moment as well. So brands very much do have a say in like what the CPM and bid is, right? So that's kind of how the seasonality piece works. So that's another huge factor in it, okay? Cool, so the next one is literally just how well people like the ad. So in a lot of these platforms, especially Facebook, if someone purchases a product through the Facebook ad or they click through the website, Facebook will sometimes ask, hey, how was your buying experience, or how was your post-click experience, and they'll rate you. And Facebook will automatically rate you as well. And a lot of these platforms do the same thing, like TikTok. So if people rate you well, you're gonna have lower CPMs, right? So your CPMs are just going to be a lot lower because you have a good experience. People like the ads, right? So if people like your ads and they enjoy them and they get engagement and all that kind of thing, they rate you as a high quality brand, you will have a lower CPM. But if people rate you poorly from like bad product or whatever it may be, and they don't like your ads, then you will have a higher CPM, right? These platforms are built to retain attention as long as possible. So if you're cutting that attention short, they will charge you for that, and you will have a worse price. And on the flip side, you will get a better price on your CPM, right, if you improve the user experience. So again, depending on how well people like your ad, if people actually enjoy seeing your ads, then again, you will have a lower CPM. So this is something to keep in mind. It affects it on a smaller scale than targeting or seasonality, but it's definitely still there. Cool. And there's a few other pieces with this as well. So with CPM, like just in general, the more you spend, oftentimes you will see a lower CPM. There's nothing like hard and fast about that, but in general, the more you spend, the lower CPM you get because you have a higher say in the bidding war, right? And bidding for these interests. So there's things like that, but again, it's not as much as a say as targeting or seasonality, okay? So the last main one here is going to obviously be the value of the conversion objective. So obviously, if you're going for add to carts versus purchases, add to carts are going to be a lot cheaper of a CPM. So if your conversion objectives add to carts and you're targeting the same audience, everything is the same, but you target add to carts versus purchases, you put that as your conversion objective, your add to cart CPM will obviously be a lot less. So sometimes for some brands, when we're actually trying to get purchases, we'll just use add to cart because the numbers work out to where the add to carts are such a cheaper CPM that simply the numbers work out in our favor, that we get enough purchases just with the add to cart objective, and we get that lower price even though we get fewer people buying than if we go for purchasers and it's more expensive but we get more people buying, right? So sometimes lower conversion objectives actually work out, and in general purchase is always going to be the most expensive, right? And I'll show you why that is. Basically with all these platforms, people are tagged with the actions they take. So if you have a collection of people, most people are website visitors. Most people have clicked on an ad and gone to a website. So everyone has that like website visitor tag. A smaller section of those people have actually added to cart, and even a smaller section of those people have purchased. So the reason your CPM goes up, obviously, as you go to a higher conversion objective, again, is because literally the supply is smaller. There's way less people who have purchased than just visited your website. So your CPM for those people is going to be a lot higher for the purchasers than the add to cart or the website. But as I said, sometimes it makes sense to just target a lower objective because it can be so much cheaper that even with the lower conversion rate, it still makes sense in the long run. So that's kind of how that works on like more of a back end level. Cool. So those are the main things with CPM, right? So if you have a really high CPM and it's just atrocious, doesn't matter what platform it's on, it's probably because most likely of targeting, who you're targeting a really expensive audience, or the platform's automatically going for a really expensive audience. Number two, seasonality is going to be a huge one. How well people like your ad, how that post-click experience is, if they are having good engagement, good reactions, liking the video, watching the video, liking the photo, whatever kind of medium you're displaying. Anecdotally, how much you spend on the platform does have a small say. The more you spend, usually the lower the CPM you'll be rewarded with. Again, it's not a huge thing, but we do see it. And then, of course, the value of the conversion objective. Purchases versus website visits, that's going to have a huge say in your CPM. Cool. All right. So the next one, actually, we can just get rid of this. The next one is going to be the unique outbound click-through rate / click-through rate. Pretty much the same thing for the sake of this video. On Facebook, the difference is just unique outbound click-through rate is the percent of people that actually click through to the website, not just like click on the ad itself to read more. So that's kind of the difference there. In general, it's just click-through rate for the sake of this video. Cool. So unique outbound click-through rate is just the percent of people that click on the ad that see it, right? So for example, if 2% of people click on the ad, that's 2 out of every 100. For the sake of this, right, if we have a 3% outbound click-through rate, then if we spent $10,000, we would have whatever this is, 869,000 people, or sorry, 2,600 people, or 26,000 people actually clicked through, right? So just 3% of people clicking through, and it cost $11 to reach 1,000 of these people. It's about $0.012 to reach one person. Ultimately, we would have had 26,000 website clicks with the 3%. And if we just change this to, let's say 1%, we'll see the difference, right? Now we're at 8696. So that's all click-through rate ultimately is, right? So what actually affects click-through rate? Click-through rate's a big deal. So the biggest thing is just click-through rate is everything that you're showing in your ad, and then who you're showing it to, of course, right? So first and foremost is going to be the creative, right? The video, the picture, the product, whatever is there, the creative itself, that's going to determine most of the click-through rate. The copy as well, right? So if you have really good copy, really convincing copy, if you have a sale or an offer, right? $100 off, free guarantee, right? Things like that, that's going to increase your click-through. And of course, just the overall angle, the product, the niche, etc., right? So if people are just interested in the product, if it's something they've never seen before, you're going to have a higher click-through. If the angle's an interesting, funny, creative angle, they're going to be clicking through more, right? Of course, the niche, right, depending on the niche you're in, that's going to change the click-through rate. And then, of course, the conversion objective. So again, oftentimes, if we're going for website visitors, we're going to see a higher click-through. If we're going for add to carts, we're going to see a lower click-through than our website visitors. And if we are targeting our purchase audiences, we're going to see the lowest click-through, most likely. So click-through rate also declines with the audience that you target, right? So that's going to also have a huge say in click-through, but ultimately it's just everything you're presenting, and of course the people you're targeting, right? So if you're showing Android users iPhones, obviously that's going to be a very low click-through, and vice versa, right? But if you just show iPhone users more iPhones, they're gonna click through a lot. So it's just the match, of course, between the targeting and what you're actually showing them, but ultimately just creative copy, angle, product, niche, and then of course your conversion objective. Cool. And last but not least is cost per click. Cost per click is a good metric as like a quick glance, but if you have a low or high cost per click, you literally have no idea why that is unless you look deeper. Because all cost per click is the combination between click-through rate and CPM, right? So cost per click is just a function of this ad spend, your CPM, and of course your click-through rate, right? It's just a function of those three variables. So in this case, it's literally just the number of website clicks, or yeah, the ad spend over the number of website clicks. That's literally all it is. And then website clicks is based off the amount of people reached, and the amount of people reached is based off of, again, the ad spend and the cost per person reached, which has to do with the CPM, right? So that's literally all it is. CPC is just a combination of your ad spend, your CPM, and your CTR. But if you ever hear anyone say, hey, we have a really high CPC, and that's all they say, they have no idea what they're talking about, because you could have a high CPC either because of CTR or CPM. But for example, you could have a really high so you could have maybe a 5% click-through rate and a $50 CPM, right? And you'd have a really high cost per click, obviously. But it wouldn't be because your CTR, it'd be because of your CPM. So cost per click literally tells you nothing unless you look deeper at CPM and CTR. So let's look at a quick example of this just in the calculator here. Oops, let me change this real quick. Cool. Yeah, so let's take a quick look. So let's just do $12 CPM. We'll pretend we spend $10,000. Again, we're just gonna be looking at this section here. Don't get too distracted. So in this case, 10,000, 2%. Our click-through, or our cost per click is going to be right $0.6 there, so just 60 cents, of course. And so maybe our CPM goes up to 50. Whoa, now we have a really high CPC, but we didn't change click-through rate. It's all just CPM, right? And the same thing, what were we at before here? 12. Let's just do a little bit easier example. So let's say we're at a $3 cost per click with a $60 CPM click-through rate, but then we go to 4, right? So that's going to change it a lot. We go back down here, right? Now it's getting cheaper and even cheaper, or actually more expensive, and now even cheaper, right? So the more obviously people click, lower the cost per click, but the more expensive those clicks are, obviously, like the more expensive that audience is, obviously the more expensive the cost per click. So I feel like a lot of people don't realize this, but it's very important to know what actually goes into cost per click. So literally just, it's the cost per impression, so the cost to show one person your ad, the percent of people that actually click on your ad, and then the ad spend. That's all that determines CPC. Cool? So if you now understand what goes into CPM, unique outbound click-through rate / click-through rate, and CPC, now you should be able to literally diagnose every single problem as to why your ads aren't performing, because, at least on the ads manager, because now you can see, hey, if our CPC is really high, let's take a look deeper. Is it our CPM, or is it our unique outbound click-through rate or click-through rate that's too high, right? So that's how you diagnose this. And even further, let's hop into conversion rate and AOV, right? So let's say we have a 2% click-through rate, and for TikTok, that's really good. For Facebook, that's like, for most platforms, that's like pretty good. For Meta and TikTok, that's quite good. For CPM, this totally depends on your niche. If you're in jewelry, this could be 50. If you're in clothing, this could be 5. It totally depends what a good CPM and that CPM is. That's totally niche specific. But let's just say it's like 20. It's like kind of a mid-range niche. Cool, cost per click's $1, right? And so we're unprofitable on ROAS. So when you're diagnosing ads, right, it's always a question of, is it the ad? Does the ad make sense? Or is it, the website variables? So when we look at this, what we can see is the cost per click is definitely a little high, right? It's definitely a little high, but you could put your website variables in and really see where the problem is. So, you know, if you have a 155 AOV and a 1% conversion, that would actually be quite good. Okay, then you're just a little bit profitable there, not much though. So now we can kind of actually diagnose what's going on when we put conversion rate in. We can see if we just had 1.5, what that would do. Okay, maybe that's not a variable we can play with, but what if we turn down CPM by $5? Cool, and what if we just increased the amount of clicks by a little bit? We just had a little bit better of an offer, right? Now we can kind of play around and see how we can actually increase ROAS. So this again is a really good tool to play around with to see with your 4 variables, conversion rate, AOV, CPM, and click-through rate, what's actually causing the problem, how you can scale your ads, and which thing is the most important to increase, right? Because sometimes you're going to be, you got the best CPM you can pretty much get, you have the best click-through rate you pretty much can get, you've optimized everything, you've gone through all these variables, and you've optimized everything you can. At that point, it's like, cool, we need to really figure out either conversion, or we really need to figure out AOV and increase this, right? Oftentimes it's a little bit of everything, but this is a really good way to understand how all the pieces fit together and how you can project ROAS, estimate ROAS, and see which lever is the most important for you to pull at this very moment. So yeah, this stuff is super, super key. Whenever we onboard a new client, we'll put in their, what we'll do is we'll put in their conversion rate, their current AOV, even better if we have numbers actually from their ad channels, and then we'll put in our projected CPM based on their niche, and then our average CTR for their niche, and then we can literally project what their ROAS will be top of funnel. So super, super useful. Again, I don't see that many people even talking about this stuff. I don't know why. I don't get it at all, but I hope this helps. I hope this makes it a bit easier to understand where these numbers come from, how seasonality affects everything, how you can better diagnose ad campaigns, because now you know all the variables that affect everything. So there's literally no reason to have a poorly performing ad campaign and not knowing why that is, okay? So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will catch you on the next one. All right, bye-bye.